Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome out of the gate. I'm just going to start here. Again, if a person cannot see what is actually happening right now, and you cannot understand that there is no way that none of this is an accident. Again, this is a complete plan. All of this has been planned out. Let me give you one specific example. Back during the Q posts, and even again after that, endless people were theorizing and even using Q posts to theorize about employing the National Guard. Of course, it's already been federalized, and we already know that because that was done during the first Trump administration through executive order, which again was consistently re-upped even by fake Joe Biden. But with that said, the federalization of Washington, D.C., and then, of course, what Trump said the other day during his press conference, which if you haven't seen the whole thing in its entirety, I highly recommend it. He's hinting clearly at using the National Guard and federalizing those particular cities, all the ones that he mentioned, New York, Chicago, L.A., etc., going through those cities and cleaning them up and cleaning them out. That move alone has been one, again, that has been theorized for many, many years. Now, before I get into some of the Q drops that actually highlight some of this, let me just give some basic definitions here of what federalization means, and then, of course, the provision or act that Trump invoked the other day that allows him, of course, to do this. Not to mention, what was interesting, and a lot of people, again, were chatting about this on the boards also, is they were clearly saying, why is Muriel Bowser, the mayor of D.C., very quiet? When at the beginning of, or I should say the end of last week, rather, when Donald Trump first said, we're going to federalize Washington, D.C., this will probably happen, blah, blah, blah. He was being kind of vague about it, but he was mentioning it anyway. Why is it that Muriel Bowser was so dead quiet? She wasn't speaking out about any of it whatsoever. Now she's recently come out, of course, after the press conference, and she's made a few comments about how she doesn't like it and she thinks it's dangerous and blah, blah, blah. But none of that really matters. She's completely neutered. There's nothing she can do. Absolutely nothing. It's 100% lawful. And again, a move like this shows clearly the level of corruption that's gone on this entire time. The number of individuals, again, police commissioners, mayors, city councils, you name it, all these individuals, judges, prosecutors, all of the people that are not doing their job. And, of course, purposefully destroying American cities. None of this is an accident. This is their plan. You destroy a country from the inside out. You make it disgusting, unsafe, grotesque in every way you can possibly imagine, corrupt beyond imagination, and then at the exact same time, you normalize all of that. And you demoralize the minds of the human beings in those areas and everywhere else into believing that there's nothing that they can do, they don't hold power. If you don't share ideologies with the people that you work around, then again, you're never going to get anywhere, and if you don't believe the crazy shit that we believe, then we're never going to hire you, and 1,000 other things. And then before you know it again, an entire country is in flames. And people believe, again, that there's nothing that they can do about it. Well, there's clearly two options when it comes to that. There's a full-blown revolution from Americans who give a damn, and they rise up and they fight back against government, and of course a lot of people would get killed. And the good guys in government know that. They know that we are capable of that. Again, we're gun-owning individuals, we love our country, and 1,000 other things, but part of the plan and part of the Q plan was to keep that bloodshed from occurring and do it by the book and use the law to their advantage, regardless of how old the law is. You just use it anyway. You invoke these particular powers and you take these cities back, thereby, again, stripping away any local power that these local corrupt officials have. Not to mention, there's this angle regarding federalization and Washington, D.C., again, right before I read these definitions here of all of this, but everybody has known for a very long time, not everybody, but plenty of you, of course, you're well aware, that Washington, D.C. is basically its own country, or certainly has been. And a number of years ago, it wasn't that long ago, a few years ago maybe, if you got on Google Maps, it wouldn't say Washington, D.C., it would just say Washington, which indicated, again, that we were either being hinted, it was either being hinted at or we were being told that they were going to eventually be federalized and have their sort of District of Columbia title removed. Therefore, it wouldn't be a long arm of the royal crown, the way, again, that the Vatican has been and that London, of course, has been. Again, Washington, D.C. was always the militarized wing of global government, with London being the money, and then, of course, the Vatican being the religious power, so to speak. Again, all of a one-world government kind of mentality. But that being stripped away now, and that, of course, this now being federalized, is a beautiful thing. So let me read this definition of federalization. Federalization, quote, refers to the process of transferring authority, control, or functions from a central national government to regional or state governments within a federal system, or the establishment of a federal structure where power is shared between central and regional entities. It can also describe the act of bringing something under federal jurisdiction, such as federalizing a state's National Guard or shifting a program from state to federal oversight. The term is often context-specific, commonly used in political, legal, or administrative discussions, like the federalization of laws or services. For example, in the United States, federalization might involve the federal government taking control of a state's National Guard during a national emergency, as seen in historic cases like disaster responses. In a broader sense, it can refer to efforts to unify or standardize systems across regions, as in debates about federalizing education or healthcare, unquote. Again, that's the nuts and bolts of the definition there of federalization. Now, what this has to do specifically regarding Section 740 of the District of Columbia's Home Rule Act, it says the following here. This was passed in 1973, and it's a provision that allows the President of the United States to take temporary control of D.C. Metropolitan Police Department under specific conditions of an emergency nature, quote unquote, that require the police force for federal purposes. It says specifically the states that the president may direct the D.C. mayor to provide the Metropolitan Police Department services for federal use, such as maintaining law and order, protecting federal buildings, monuments, or other property, and ensuring the orderly functioning of the federal government. The mayor is then required to comply with this directive. Again, before I keep reading this description here, which I ripped off of Grok, what's cool is that in the midst of all of this, even again now that the DOJ and President Trump himself have essentially hired and appointed an interim police chief or commissioner of police, that means that this individual is involved in running the entire establishment, which means any single entity that gets in the way, who works for the Metropolitan Police Department there in D.C., anybody who obstructs, you are quite literally obstructing federal law and a federal takeover, which means you're not just out of a job, you're going to jail. You're going to be charged with a crime. Again, any of these individuals working for that police department or any of their subsidiaries, these people are screwed if they get in the way. If they don't do what they are told by this one entity, this one person, they're screwed. Because now they only have one boss. They don't have 10 bosses or 5 supervisors or all that bureaucratic nonsense. They don't have any of that anymore. They have to flat out answer to one person. It goes on here, which, by the way, I should say this too. This would be really interesting, and I bet this is happening. Because you squeeze these people, I'm telling you what, and they instantly start sending emails. And they instantly start telling everybody who they've been working around this entire time, who's dirty, who's clean, who you can trust, who you can't, and 1,000 other things. There have to be people, again, who work within inside the Metropolitan Police Department of D.C., and they're sending Trump and the DOJ a list of the people who are dirty. That has to be the case, because there have to be good people that work there who know exactly what's going on. And like I'll get to later, some of these whistleblowers, again, within government are keeping the receipts. They're taking screenshots. They're meeting up with lawyers. They're having their own depositions taken. They're getting all of this out on the record privately to then again release it publicly. I bet in the future we start seeing Metropolitan Police employees coming out against the mayor, the commissioner of police, and a bunch of other individuals, again, that work within that police department. Because, again, it's already been reported that there's whistleblowers, again, who have openly stated that they've been fudging the numbers regarding crime. We know that they've been doing that. Hell, they'll have a list of blacks and even Hispanics that they've taken mugshots of. And when it comes to filling in the checkbox of what race they are, it'll say white, when clearly they aren't. This goes on across the entire nation all of the time. But let me, again, keep reading this particular description. It says key points about Section 740. It says the scope, it applies only to the Metropolitan Police Department. It says not other D.C. law enforcement agencies. Duration, it says the federal court lasts up to 48 hours without congressional notification. If the president notifies Congress within that period, the emergency control can extend up to 30 days unless Congress passes a resolution to extend it further. The timing of this could not be more perfect, which means I have to read this now. And I put this online and people were like, holy shit, nice catch. To which I said, you're welcome, no problem. There was a Q post here from, let's see, this would be March 27th of 2018. And it simply says, done in 30. House cleaning. White House secured. Final stage. Q. Again, this is not a coincidence. This is happening. This is going down right now. And this is also, of course, deterrence. As I've said before, from a legal standpoint, deterrence has to be used. And it's being used because in that same press conference, Donald Trump openly said, look, we're just getting started. He said, New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, we might have to do this there too. And then, of course, what does that do? Because these people are stupid, as it was clearly mentioned in all of the Q posts as well, these people are stupid. Look up that term on the Q board and you'll find endless posts. The fact is that every single governor of all three of those states, Illinois, New York, and California, all started screaming at the top of their lungs that they're going to start gerrymandering. Well, we'll gerrymander and we'll double down on our efforts and we'll cheat and we'll steal and we'll do everything that we have to do to make sure that you can't do whatever it is that you think that you can do and blah, blah, blah. They're openly admitting that they're communist states. They're openly admitting that they're 100% fine harboring illegal aliens, breaking the law, cheating in elections. They're openly coming out and telling everybody this now. It's right here for everybody to see. So again, done in 30. Look that up on the Q boards because it's right there, because this order is done in 30 days unless Congress passes a resolution to extend it further, who of course is coming back in under 30 days, Congress. And they have the majority and they can pass it. As a result, not only again does this particular order last up to 48 hours, during that press conference, Donald Trump already said, well, we already got started. We already got started over the weekend, which means he implemented this probably on Friday or Saturday. He let Congress know on Sunday or Monday, certainly Mike Johnson and whomever else. And then, of course, that's it. All he has to do is tell Congress. He doesn't have to have Congress actually make a vote or anything. He just has to say, hey, Congress, here's what I'm doing. Now you know, now we have 30 days. Not to mention, if it said done in 30 days on Q posts, that means that Donald Trump and the good guys fully understand that they don't need 30 days. They can clean house faster than that. And again, like moths to the flame, all the fat weirdo leftists with colored hair immediately came out of the woodwork and started chanting and painting signs and taking to the streets saying, you know, Donald Trump needs to get out of here and blah, blah, blah. Okay, none of that matters. It's just exposing more of the insanity. All of the people who are 100% fine with law breaking. It goes on here. It says the purpose of this, Section 740, is designed to address emergencies that impact federal interests in the district, such as significant public safety threats or disruptions to federal operations. Historical use. The first known invocation of Section 740 occurred on August 11th of 2025, just the other day, when President Donald Trump used it to place the MPD under federal control, citing a crime emergency in Washington, D.C., and delegated authority to the Attorney General to oversee the MPD. However, it's been done before. It has been done, I believe, back in the 70s, specifically again regarding Washington, D.C., but maybe it was only done for like 48 hours. It wraps up here and it says, in essence, Section 740 acts as a federal override mechanism allowing the president to temporarily federalize D.C.'s police force during emergencies, bypassing local control by the mayor. This provision reflects the unique status of Washington, D.C. as a federal district where Congress retains ultimate authority despite the limited self-governance granted by the Home Rule Act. Efforts to repeal Section 740 have been proposed, such as the District of Columbia Police Home Rule Act, to enhance D.C.'s autonomy by removing this presidential power, unquote. It's not going to happen. It won't happen. The good guys are in control here. Again, ample evidence of that. Let me continue to read some of these posts. If you get on operationq.pub and you type in the full two words, National Guard, you only get 3 posts. But if you type in capital N, capital G, you get more posts because later on, of course, National Guard was abbreviated. Or certainly in certain posts it was abbreviated. I'm going to read these in order, chronologically, just these 3. All 3 of these, by the way, landed on, my apologies, 2 of them landed on 2020, and the last one was on 2022, the year 2022. This first one is post 4521 on June 25th of 2020. At the very top of the post, it has a screenshot of House Resolution 7297 to amend Title 18 United States Code to prohibit the use of an armed force under the jurisdiction of the Secretary of the Military Department as a posse comitatus or otherwise to execute the laws and for other purposes. It then says the following. Again, it's got a link to that and another PDF link to it. It says, worth tracking, Q said, quote, the Posse Comitatus Act, 18 U.S. Code, Section 1385, an original intent of which was to end the use of federal troops to police state elections, quote unquote, or in kill brackets, rather, in former Confederate states, prescribes the role of the Army and Air Force in executing civil laws and states, unquote. Then they wrote key exceptions to the Posse Comitatus Act. It says, quote, pursuant to the presidential power to quell domestic violence, federal troops are expressly exempt from the prohibitions of Posse Comitatus Act, and this exemption applies equally to active duty military and federalized National Guard troops, unquote. Q then wrote, what is Adam Schiff trying to prevent? Everything you are witnessing, past and present and future in kill brackets, centrally revolves around the presidential election of 2020. Win by any means necessary, and then in kill brackets it says self-preservation, Q, unquote. That pretty much lays it out right there too. They didn't want the National Guard to be federalized. They don't want anything to be federalized because they want control over their cities and their states as much as humanly possible. It's the only thing they have left. This is the infiltration, not invasion approach here, which leads me now to the next Q post, which is 4699, September 14th of 2020. It says the following, quote, what happens when people in positions of power are sympathizers to the cause or part of that same organization, quote unquote, themselves? What is a safe zone? Why are riots conducted in specific decontrolled locations, Democrat-controlled locations? What happens when elected officials, governors, mayors, handcuff the officers instead of criminals? What happens when elected officials, governors, mayors, in kill brackets, by the way, governors, mayors, refuse to call in the National Guard or other federal assistance, sacrificing the lives and well-being of the community for a calculated political gain or other, in kill brackets? And they listed a particular article. Then it says, does Antifa fear prosecution? Would they continue to operate if they did? What organization groups are bailing out rioters within 24 hours or of arrests, rather? What happens post-bailout? Do charges remain enforced or dropped by district attorney? And then it says DA, district attorney, will not act regarding low-level arrests, quote unquote. Have all refusal to bring charges been related to low-level arrests? And then they linked another Twitter post from Andy No from a while back. And then it says sympathizer question mark, other question mark. What happens when prosecutors, board of county commissioner members, volunteer fighters, etc., are sympathetic to the cause? What happens if the organization Antifa itself is aware? Infiltration, not invasion. Q. Again, this was the bad guys' plan this whole time. Weaponize people, let the bad guys out of jail. Don't prosecute anybody who's vandalizing. Again, all of this was happening back in 2020, and we were seeing it at face value. Now, here's the last one with the full-term National Guard in it. This was post 4960 on November 7th, 2022. It said, quote, why do some elections take more than a day to count? Can cheating be done after the polls are closed? Who controls the poll books? Who controls databases? Who controls the elections? Why are extra ballots printed? If someone doesn't vote, can bad actors hijack their vote? How? Why did the National Guard activate cybersecurity teams? Who gave the order to activate the cybersecurity teams? Why? To protect the elections? To claim the midterms are safe? Safe from what? Setting the stage? Watch carefully. White hats have secured many systems, but problems still remain. You have all the tools you need. Vote. Q. Again, that was 2 years ago, 9 months ago, and over 4 days ago. We were told that good guys are in the right positions and that they're catching these people. All of these orders were given by Donald Trump to catch these people and the military at the time under his direction. And he's legally still been the president of the United States, again, since he was elected in 2016. All the way through Joe Biden's fake presidency and administration and whatever the hell else you want to call that. You may recall, too, again, if you saw the press conference, that Pete Hegseth said something rather interesting also. He openly said that it wasn't just the National Guard that could be called in, but other forces. So here's a particular, again, this is interesting here, but this is one of the things that does happen consistently with timestamps, Q posts, and then again the time of particular tweets that are released. The White House Twitter account on, again, August 11th at 10:40 a.m. sent out a tweet that said President Donald J. Trump invokes the D.C. Home Rule Act to place the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department under federal control and deploy the National Guard to make our nation's capital safe again. August 11th, if you type in 11th in the Q drops, it comes up with Q drop 316, which was on December 9th of 2017. And the post simply says, martial law starting the 11th. What are the odds of that? This is a military operation. It has to be. It's military planning at its finest. It's too precise. Again, this is Occam's razor. 100% when it comes to thinking about this. The answer always lies in the explanation that requires the least amount of assumptions. You don't have to assume anything with any of this. That's why, again, this Q board is so important for people to go back and look at. It's being used as a historic reference on a consistent basis because it has to be that way. And that's part of our job. Certainly, I think, those of us that followed the posts when we were following them all of this time, is to use it as a reference board. Type in National Guard, like I said, into the Q boards and read the posts, and it'll all make sense because it's eye-opening. I mean, that's the cool part about it, is it's still designed to wake people up. Now, you could be a brainwashed goon and a leftist and be like, whatever, that's a conspiracy theory. I mean, a person, a person could say that, I guess, but they're just showing you how retarded they are. That's all. The evidence is right here in front of our face. We were told this was going to happen. And again, when Donald Trump just the other day openly said, well, New York might be next, Chicago might be next, Los Angeles might be next. There are other various dangerous cities that exist across the United States. Memphis, Nashville, Austin, Texas. I mean, the list is frankly endless. San Francisco. You can go up and down the line. Detroit. Detroit. Among endless other places. Donald Trump, the President of the United States, is not saying particular things just to say them. Again, this is calculated. It's too precise. It has to be done this way. And in that Q post that I just read, all of this having to do with the election of 2020, no doubt about it. It stretches way back even before then. But all of these individuals, again, who were in on the 2020 election steal, election lie, they've all been caught. Every single one of them has been caught. Now, I'm going to stretch back here real quick and, again, test people's memory here. Remember the Law of War Manual? And I have it linked on my website under the Government Documents tab on that huge list of documents. Again, the PDF is there. You can look it up yourself 100%. But if you look up 11.3, even in Q drops, it's there. 11.3 is in the Law of War Manual, and 11.3 is defined as end of occupation and duration of GC obligations. Here's what it says. It says the status of belligerent occupation ends when the conditions for its application are no longer met. Certain GC obligations with respect to occupied territory continue for the duration of the occupation after the general close of military operations. And then end of occupation, which is 11.3.1, is defined as belligerent occupation ceases when the conditions for its application are no longer met. In particular, as discussed below, the status of belligerent occupation ceases when the invader no longer factually governs the occupied territory or when a hostile relationship no longer exists between the state of the occupied territory and the occupying power. Let me translate that as accurately as I think I can, and this is my opinion. It means that Donald Trump and the federalization of Washington, D.C. won't stop until all of the guilty parties are rounded up. And he's starting with Washington, D.C. on purpose. He didn't start with New York, Chicago, San Francisco, Memphis, Tennessee, L.A. He didn't start with those cities. He could have. But you start with the capital because that sends the message. It sends the message that they're coming after these people. And like I said earlier, they're trying to use deterrence. They're trying to get these people to basically back down, quit their jobs, leave their positions, don't run for president, don't seek elected office. And if you think that doing that will somehow cause you to evade the law in some way, it's not going to. You're still going to be caught for what you've done. You're still going to be detained, arrested, charged, sentenced, and then hopefully executed, if not imprisoned for the rest of your life. He's using deterrence. He's helping these people. He's basically saying, we're coming after you. Recognize this and back down or else. But they're not going to back down because these people are stupid. They're going to double down on their stupidity and their illegality and their criminality, and they won't quit until, again, they're arrested or they kill themselves. One of the two. But you had to start with Washington, D.C. because it's the capital. Just from an optics standpoint alone, it looks fantastic. It's fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, I got to tell you, I love this shit. I love it. I've waited years for this to happen. And again, all of us reading the Q posts back when we were doing it, we've waited forever for this to happen. And it's happening. Finally, it's happening. It should also be mentioned, of course, that most of these cities in these particular areas where this is certainly going to be taking place in the future are run by blacks. They have black mayors. They have woke, quote unquote, police chiefs and 1,000 other things. They're hiring illegals to be on their police force. They have black city council members, again, all leftists by and large. These are not run by constitutional conservatives. They're run by communists. So when Donald Trump says woke, just like when you see the term teens in some news headline, teens break into a jewelry store, teens raid a mall, teens beat an old man to death on the side of the road. It's blacks. When Donald Trump says woke ideology, he knows exactly who he's talking about. And so do we. He's talking again about these individuals in these places primarily. It's not all of them, but it's primarily being run by leftist blacks. This doesn't happen in white Republican towns or cities by and large. It just doesn't. Now, this is where Adam Schiff comes into play. Just the other day, again, John Harold over on Badlands Media, he put out a tweet where he basically said, hey, this is really all good stuff. Love what's happening. Can we get another D-class of some information here? And then sure enough, they ended Kash Patel, rather, and the FBI and DNI, they ended up declassing a whistleblower's statements about Adam Schiff, specifically, again, regarding all of this Russia hoax and all of this other stuff and treasonous behavior. Again, not a coincidence. Here was Enoch over on X at NewsBlast17. It said, do you believe in coincidence? On the 10th of December, 2017, Q posts about Schiff being a traitor and a leaker. That was post 325. Again, on December 10th of 2017, where it says, Adam Schiff is a traitor to our country, leaker. National security, evil, TikTok. Hope the 7.8 million was worth it. Enjoy the show. And then again at the top of that post, Q said blunt and direct time. And then again in the John Solomon article, it says a career intelligence officer who worked for the Democrats on the House Intelligence Committee for more than a decade repeatedly warned the FBI beginning in 2017, not a coincidence, that then Representative Adam Schiff had approved leaking classified information to smear then-President Donald Trump over the now debunked Russiagate scandal, according to bombshell FBI memos that Director Kash Patel has turned over to Congress. It says the FBI 302 interviews report obtained by Just the News state the intelligence staffer, a Democrat by party affiliation, who described himself as a friend to both Schiff, now a California senator, and former Republican House Intelligence Chairman Devin Nunes, considered the classified leaking to be unethical, illegal, and treasonous, but was told to not worry about it because Schiff believed he would be spared prosecution under the Constitution's speech and debate clause. As it turns out, in that same classified document from a whistleblower, which again was, let's see, this was the date of entry from the Federal Bureau of Investigation was on June 28th of 2023. It openly stated that Adam Schiff also believed that he was going to be the CIA director if Hillary Clinton won, and he was upset that Hillary Clinton lost because, again, he was under the impression that he would be the head of the CIA. Can you imagine Adam Schiff being the head of the CIA? He would come after every single American citizen with everything he had. Here's this particular document, again, which was declassed. It says a number of different things, again, regarding Adam Schiff. It says the following: project identity, date of birth, blah, blah, blah. There's some redactions here. But it says, was interviewed at the Marriott St. Louis Grand Hotel located at 800 Washington Avenue, St. Louis, Missouri, 63101 by Special Agents blank and Special Agent blank. After being advised of the identity of the interviewing agents and the nature of the interview, blank provided the following information. Blank previously had a positive experience working with the Federal Bureau of Investigation related to incidents in 2017 that occurred when blank worked on the United States House of Representatives Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. That would be Adam Schiff, of course, I would assume. Or this very person who, again, is the one providing this information. It says, it actually is that person. It's not Schiff. Anyway, it goes on. It says, in this position, blank worked with senior political leaders from both major political parties, including Congressman Adam Schiff and former Congressman Devin Nunes. Blank was friends with both Schiff and Nunes. When working in this capacity, blank was called to an all-staff meeting by Schiff. In this meeting, Schiff stated, the group would leak classified information which was derogatory to President of the United States Donald J. Trump. Schiff stated the information would be used to indict President Trump, stated this would be illegal, and upon hearing his concerns, unnamed members of the meeting reassured blank that they would not be caught leaking classified information. Blank was again approached about leaking classified information in a separate meeting by unnamed individuals. Blank believed this activity to be unethical and treasonous. The whistleblower. Blank was concerned about the discussions and as a result reached out to contacts from his prior blank. It says employment for guidance on where to report this experience. These discussions led blank to contact the FBI regarding his concerns. Blank had several conversations with two unnamed FBI agents related to the matter and was eventually invited to attend a mock, and then it cuts off. Adam Schiff is screwed. He's done, and they've had him this whole time. All these years they've had him. That's why he keeps screaming at the top of his lungs regarding everything. They've got him dead to rights. More specifically, there's this also, again, having to do with Adam Schiff and the Espionage Act. It says specifically, the Espionage Act includes provisions like 18 U.S.C. subsection 793, gathering, transmitting, or losing defense information. It says this provision prohibits the unauthorized disclosure of information related to national defense. It penalizes actions like improperly accessing, handling, or transmitting information respecting the national defense, quote unquote, with the intent to harm the United States or aid in a foreign nation, or aid a foreign nation. My apologies. And then 18 U.S.C. subsection 798, disclosure of classified information. This section specifically criminalizes the knowing and willful disclosure of classified information to unauthorized individuals. It applies to information concerning cryptographic systems, communication intelligence activities, and classified defense strategies, unquote. Now, one could surmise that that's exactly what John McCain was guilty of, which is exactly why he was executed. Adam Schiff is not long for this world, ladies and gentlemen. He's not. His day is coming here, faster, I think, than we can possibly imagine. It goes on. It says intent. It says the prosecution would need to prove that Schiff acted with specific intent to harm the United States or benefit a foreign power for certain provisions of the Espionage Act. However, for other provisions, like 18 U.S.C. subsection 798, the prosecution only needs to prove that the individual knowingly and willfully disclosed the classified information to an unauthorized person. Oh, he knowingly did it. They already have proof. National defense information, it says here. The Espionage Act's definition of national defense information is broad and extends beyond just military information, encompassing information relating to national security more generally. Yeah, he's done. And then it wraps up and says, statute of limitations. Not for this bad boy. Not in the time section anyway, where he's still right here in the kill box and in the crosshairs. It says, while most federal crimes have a 5-year statute of limitations, act of espionage generally have a 10-year statute of limitations, allowing the FBI and other investigators more time to pursue a case, unquote. He's done. He's done. He's not going to make it. He will not survive. We're going to watch Adam Schiff get arrested. Period. It's going to happen. The public is just being told this now. Those, again, of us who knew in the past that this was an inevitability, well, now it's here, and we're all sitting back and eating popcorn until we're fat in the face. But the fact is that the unknowing public has no idea how deep this rabbit hole goes with these people and how evil they are. and what they actually had planned. In fact, here's a quick little piece of audio, about 1 minute long. This is Kash Patel describing Adam Schiff meeting with this whistleblower back in 2022. Give him a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Adam Schiff is the worst criminal in Congress in the last 250 years. And what broke that we're going to talk about right now is Adam Schiff met with a whistleblower. Adam Schiff went to the podium day after day after day saying, I know nothing about this. We're not going to discuss it. We're going to protect it. And then Adam Schiff, led the prosecution of the impeachment trial in the Senate of President Donald Trump. Talk about someone who was conflicted out of the game because he was part of the hoax that brought Charmella in, manufactured that false accusation, and then peddled it out to the world. And he continued, not surprising. He's lied about almost everything in his life. But now he lied just to set up a presidential impeachment. The guy that found and manufactured the evidence with Charmella was the prosecutor in the case against the target of the investigation. That is the ultimate, from a prosecutorial standpoint, conflict of interest. But he knew what he was doing, and he thought he would never get exposed. And I think thanks to, I think it was John Solomon and his fantastic reporting, we now see what I've been saying for years, that I thought he met with him for sure, and it will come out, and it now has.
That was 3 years ago. That audio was 3 years ago. Again, there's no way you gather all of this information from all of these whistleblowers, all of these insiders, previous employees, whomever. Military operation, of course, NSA, surveillance, all of it, and not arrest people. You arrest all of these people. And deterrence is a hell of a drug. And it's contagious. And there will be people who kill themselves as a result. And they should, because they're evil. Now, with all of that said, let me mention this too. Again, sort of DC and done in 30 and all of that to the side here. The false flags that are going to start taking place here are going to be abundant as well. And one happened just the other day on August 11th with an explosion at a Pennsylvania steel plant. Not an accident. Again, Donald Trump wanting steel production to come back to the United States, certainly advocating for Pennsylvania. Their Governor Shapiro is a complete piece of trash. And then, of course, wouldn't you know it, there just happens to be an explosion at a steel plant. This was Red Pill Drifter at Red Pill Drifter on X, and they said the following. The explosion is being called a mass casualty event at the steel plant in Pennsylvania, Clairton Coke Works. It says, this is a few months after President Trump announced that U.S. Steel will be ramping up manufacturing again. If you have no pattern recognition skills, this just might look like nothing. Quote, Trump has made statements about U.S. Steel, particularly regarding its partnership with Nippon Steel Corporation. As noted earlier on May 30th, 2025, Trump announced a blockbuster agreement, quote-unquote, at the rally in West Mifflin, Pennsylvania, near the Clairton Coke Works, emphasizing that U.S. Steel would remain American, retain its Pittsburgh headquarters, and see significant investment from Nippon Steel without a full acquisition. It says he also mentioned a $5,000 bonus for U.S. steel workers and doubled tariffs on foreign steel to 50%. On June 13th of 2025, he issued an executive order approving this partnership, which includes $11 billion in investments by 2018 and a golden share, quote-unquote, giving the U.S. government veto power over certain corporate decisions. These statements apply to U.S. Steel as a whole, including facilities like Clairton Coke Works. Then they wrote, the NWO does not want the U.S. to begin producing goods since the U.S. is the world's largest buyer of goods. The U.S. imports $33.15 billion in steel per year. Wake up and realize what President Trump is doing, unquote. The false flags here are going to continue. I think they're going to continue with some of these steel plants. I think it might, of course, well, it's rather predictable that it's going to spill over into American schools. I don't think that's going to be an accident. It will be an intentional. If the bad guys need to kill innocent children and show a bunch of dead innocent children on American television, from an American school in order, again, to distract from anything that President Trump is doing right now. And again, certainly weeding out the riffraff and the illegality within some of these major cities. They certainly have that within them. It's in their playbook. So this is the see something, say something kind of moment here, ladies and gentlemen, because the bad guys only have reaction as a tool, because it is their only tool. They're on their heels. They have nothing else to do other than retaliate in some way. And that's up and down the board, regardless of how local or small your government is. It's the only move that they can make, because they've been caught. They've all been caught. And they're not dumb enough to stay quiet and just mind their own business and just go through the motions. They have to actually attempt to at least make it look like they're the ones that are the responsible party, when, of course, we know that they are not. We know that they've been behind this the entire time. So with that said, I'm going to kind of move on here. Let's see. I do want to make mention of this very quickly. And again, this should show people how deep this rabbit hole goes, because a lot of people, of course, don't even know that this exists. But the fact is that when it came to the Cincinnati Police Department and the Cincinnati, Ohio, of course, riot, or not, it wasn't even a riot, really. It was certainly an assault and battery of a felonious nature that occurred a couple of weeks back. As it turns out, city council and taxpayer dollars go directly toward Cincinnati police agitators, so to speak. And what I mean by that is they pay citizens to show up where the Cincinnati police are investigating a particular event and bother the police department and catch them on film and harass them and basically obstruct justice. And the Cincinnati, again, city council, at least I assume it's them, it's certainly on the taxpayer dollar. They pay these individuals, again, an individual, up to at least $8,000 a month. It is literally their job. This is, again, the infiltration instead of invasion. The problem is right here. The enemy is right here. And I would love for Cincinnati to be on a list of cities that gets cleaned out. Do it with Cleveland, do it with Columbus, do it with Cincinnati, go to Toledo, set Toledo on fire because nobody likes Toledo. But either way, just get rid of them. Flat out get rid of them. Get a list of the good people and get rid of the bad people. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, if people want to make comparisons to Adolf Hitler and Donald Trump, I say go for it. Adolf Hitler got rid of communism. What's Donald Trump doing right now? He's getting rid of communism. Because he gets to. It's lawful, just like it was lawful back then in 1930s Germany. Same thing, and it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. Those who know real history can see the real parallels here. Those who believe fake history and the bullshit you're taught in school, well, I'm sorry. You can't see the parallels here. And you can't see the positive parallels because there are endless positive parallels. Okay. Education. Couple of things here. First of all, this was from Not the Bee. And this, again, stereotypical and remarkably unfortunate, but it was titled, Tennessee Girl Strip Searched, Put in Solitary Confinement, Sentenced to House Arrest because School's AI Surveillance Program didn't understand her joke. It said a 13-year-old 8th grader from Fairview Middle School in Tennessee was arrested and ultimately sentenced to 8 weeks of house arrest, a psychological evaluation, and 20 days at an alternative school, all because her school's AI program flagged a conversation she had with her friends on their school-issued devices. Now, I gotta tell you, I said this would happen. I said things like this would happen, that schools would weaponize their own technology devices that they allow students to use against the student, certainly when it comes to their own use of AI. Whether they want to make a meme or they want to look up a particular realistic fact or they want to look up something or even have a debate with an AI system to see whether or not the thing that they're talking about is real or not from a historic perspective. That the school itself will confiscate the technological device and then use it against the minor. Under no circumstances should this 13-year-old girl ever go back to a public school ever again. They should teach themselves at home. It says, according to the Associated Press, here's how the conversation went down. The girl's friend had been teasing the teen about her tanned complexion and called her Mexican, even though she's not. When a friend asked what she was planning for Thursday, she wrote, on Thursday, we kill all the Mexicos. All the Mexicos, quote unquote. However, the school uses Gaggle's AI program to monitor chats for threats. And because it's a machine and doesn't understand context, it immediately flagged this sentence as a threat to all Mexicans. It's AI, what can you expect? Rather than doing their due diligence and digging into the context, the school's personnel immediately alerted police, who promptly arrested the bewildered girl, drove her to the police station, strip searched her, forced her to shower on camera, coerced her into signing documents she didn't understand without a lawyer, and threw her in a solitary confinement for 24 hours. I'm shocked she wasn't trafficked, frankly. We know police departments are capable of that. It goes on, it says her parents didn't even know where she was. And when they finally found out what happened, they were not allowed any contact until after the solitary confinement was completed. And a judge later kept up the lack of due diligence and rationality, ruling the poor girl was, quote, probably mentally retarded, unquote, and ordering a psych evaluation, followed by putting her under house arrest where she was not allowed contact with anyone but her parents. It says while she was under house arrest, the school filed truancy charges against the parents for not having her in school. All of this because the girl made a joke that the AI program took out of context. The Associated Press analyzed data from Gaggle and found that its flags were wrong nearly 70% of the time. It says, again, first of all, the first move for the parents should have been to unenroll their child from the school. That's immediate. The school, ladies and gentlemen, is not the parent. They do not get to discipline a child, in particular if said child is no longer affiliated with the school. Pull them out. Get them out of these environments. These technological security walls are being built around minors as if it's normal, as if they need to comply with a effing robot all of the time. And then, of course, the human robots who can't think for themselves, who just believe what robots tell them. It can't get more unsafe. It goes on, it says, Gaggle alerted more than 1,200 incidents to the Lawrence, Kansas school district in a recent 10-month period, but almost 2/3 of those alerts were deemed by school officials to be non-issues, including over 200 false alarms from student homework, according to the Associated Press analysis of data received via a public records request. Students in one photography class were called to the principal's office over concerns Gaggle had detected nudity. The photos had been automatically deleted from the students' Google Drives, but students who had backups of the flagged images on their own devices showed it was a false alarm. District officials said they later adjusted the software settings to reduce false alerts. Natasha, no way I get this last name, Torkazaban, there we go, who graduated in 2024, said she was flagged for editing a friend's college essay because it had the words mental health, quote unquote. It goes on, it says, as for why these schools implement these surveillance programs, Ann Costello, a board member of a school district in Lawrence, Kansas, had this to say: sometimes you have to look at the trade for the greater good. Well, that person sounds like a moron. Again, what's the greater good exactly? You don't know how to operate your so-called greater good. Therefore, it's not a greater good. There's nothing good about it. This is, this is going to happen with a level of frequency that people cannot possibly comprehend. Students are going to get suspended for looking up some basic answers. Maybe, again, they decide to make a meme, and then they get suspended out of school because somebody got their feelings hurt. These are not safe environments. I just don't even know what more to say. Other than this will be the last thing I bring up here. And this is frightening. This was brought to my attention from a family member. Thank you. You know who you are. This is from WTTW, news.wttw.com, out of Chicago here. This was at the end of July. Pritzker signs legislation to implement universal mental health screenings in Illinois schools. Guess who's going to be the evaluators of students' mental health? You guessed it, every single school teacher in Illinois. Which means you're not sending your children to an Illinois public school to be taught by a school teacher, ladies and gentlemen. You're sending them to an Illinois public school to be evaluated by an unqualified school teacher regarding your child's so-called mental health. This is designed to strip children away from their parents, kidnap them, and make them prisoners of the state. That's not an exaggeration. Here's what it says, quote, students in 3rd to 12th grade in Illinois will be able to take annual mental health screenings starting in the 27-28 school year under Bill Governor J.B. Pritzker signed into law Thursday. Screenings provide early identification and intervention so that those who are struggling get the help they need as soon as possible, Pritzker said. They improve academic and social outcomes. They help us break down the stigma that too often is a barrier to seeking help. No, that's not what it is. It's designed to trick these children into believing they have a problem when they don't. It's like taking the ADHD medication story and storyline, putting it on steroids, electrifying it, and then doing whatever they have to do as a system to get all of their so-called mental health services, quote unquote, and medication and everything else. And again, trick these children and even their parents into believing that something is wrong with the child. And trust me when I say this, as a former school teacher, I can't tell you how many times I saw parents completely submit to ESE liaisons, special education liaisons, all of these so-called, social workers and counselors and mental health professionals, and completely submit to their decision-making as a so-called mental health professional. Again, you're basically, as a parent, saying, government is a better parent than I am. I don't know how to parent my kids. Government knows more than I do. School teachers know more than I do. People who work in education know more than I do. That's absurd. And that line, again, is used purposefully to demoralize people so that they, again, willfully give up their children to government. This article goes on, it says the mental health screenings would be self-assessed, with students being able to take the screening on a tablet or a form, according to Dana Weiner, Jewish, Chief Officer of the Children's Behavioral Health Transformation Initiative under the governor's office, and who was credited for laying the foundation for the piece of legislation. And there you have it, every single time. Parents can opt their students out of mental health screenings if they wish, Weiner added. Yeah, that'd be the first thing I'd do. It says the screenings are a form of detection and are not meant to serve as a diagnosis. Well, of course you'd say that, because the exact opposite is true, and oh look, it's coming from a Jewish Democrat. So they're lying twice. According to State Senator Laura Fine, Democrat from Glenview, who chairs the Mental Health Committee, quote, we've got children in 3rd grade who are struggling, and we need to be able to reach these kids. They're not baby goats, they're children. And now, she continued, and said, they will have access to that age-appropriate and confidential mental health screening, Fine said. They went on and said the screenings will be designed to catch the early signs of anxiety, depression, and trauma before it becomes a crisis, or in some cases, sometimes too late, unquote. Well, they're in school. Of course they're going to experience anxiety, depression, and trauma. That's the design of the actual environment. It's designed to be that way on purpose. It goes on, it says, the law makes Illinois the first state in the country to mandate universal mental health screenings in schools, Pritzker said during a bill signing ceremony at Chute Middle School in Evanston. Evanston Skokie School District 65, if I'm saying that right, which Chute Middle School is under, has conducted mental health screenings for students for the last 5 years, according to District Superintendent Angel Turner. The district served as an early partner in the work to support universal mental health screenings for students, state officials said. Quote, we deserve better. In Abahivna Ann, if that's their real name, an incoming senior at Nakua Valley High School in Naperville and youth advocate, said during the bill signing event, we deserve systems that listen before we scream and act before we fall. Oh, that's dramatic. This is also 100% communistic, ladies and gentlemen. It's like peer mentoring, again on steroids, lack of a better phrase. Peer mentoring has its moments where it could be positive, but when it comes to something like this, where the state government, brainwashing, actually designs the implementation of the entire, whatever you would call it, application that they're actually using, and then you have minors helping implement this with other minors, and all of these minors taking this either collectively or individually, you're never going to get any accurate assessment of anything ever. Not to mention, and this is basically the easiest point to make, it's none of the school's business. It isn't government's business. It should never be government's business. This is the business of the family and the child. Most children are not mentally ill, but government wants them to think that they are, so that they can control them. Because again, this is about mind control. It's about demoralization from the earliest age humanly possible. And once you get them young, breaking out of that satanic matrix is next to impossible. It wraps up and it says, in addition to requiring all school districts to offer mental health screenings by the 27-28 school year, the bill also requires the Illinois State Board of Education to provide resource materials and guidance to schools on how to implement universal mental health screenings by September 1st of 2016, unquote. At least you can opt out of this. Again, parents have got to start sending their children, again, not start sending their children to school, but if you're going to and you have no other choice, and I know of endless examples where that is the case, the fact is you have to send your kids with a letter that says, I want my children to opt out of everything having to do with your school except for learning content. Because the school environment is no longer about learning content. They're mental health facilities, but they're not health facilities. They're mental degradation facilities. They are designed to destroy the human mind as early as humanly possible under the guise of, again, them believing that they're helping things. Hell, the local wellness coordinator in the school district in the town where I live thinks that flu shots are the number one preventative thing that they can do to improve people's health. Flu shots. These people, again, sound vaccinated. They sound like they're on drugs. It's that kind of mentality again. I mean, you almost have to staple it to your kid's shirt that says, keep your hands off of me. Only teach me reading, writing, spelling, math, and that's about it. I'll handle history and science on my own at home, but just teach me that kind of stuff so that once I get a grasp of that, I can teach myself at home without your help. Do parents not see any of this? All of the forms that go home on the first day of school that parents have to sign on a constant basis, that stack of papers is getting bigger and bigger and the print is getting smaller and smaller? This is the direction it's going in. Again, they're insane asylums and they're being run by the insane because they're trying to make your children as crazy as they are, because that's Marxism, that's communism. That's exactly what it is. And if you say otherwise, well, they're going to turn into a Bolshevik real quick and they're going to come after you. The school year's here, ladies and gentlemen. Wednesday's the first day for many Ohio schools, if not all of them. And it's game on all across the nation. This is going to get out of hand real quick. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned because, again, geopolitically and all over the nation, it's happening. It's happening, and these people are digging in because it's a war, and the war rages on here. I'll catch you on Friday. Thanks for listening as always. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.